I knew a man, Bojangles, and he danced for you in worn out
CL. Back with you on this Thursday, the Thursday before Independence Day weekend. And I want to welcome all of you aboard here throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known. It's always a pleasure to meet new friends and new guests to the most listened to talk here in the Arklatex area. And of course, we are looking to expand our reach throughout the nation. Download this free CL Bryant, the CL Bryant app onto your smartphone or Android. Joining me is retired gunnery sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps, and her name is Jessie Jane Duff. Jessie Jane Duff, thank you for your service to our nation and welcome for the first time to the CL Bryant Show.
Good afternoon, Motivator. I am so excited that you invited me to your fabulous show.
Thank you so much, Jessie, if I may call you Jessie.
Of course.
And Jessie, let me ask you this. Here we are about to celebrate Independence Day, the Declaration of American Independence. In your own estimation, in your own words, tell us the impact, the power of such a declaration and what it may have had on you throughout your lifetime.
Well, we are the world's largest and longest sustained free country that the earth and world has ever known. I mean, it is just fabulous when you think about what our founding fathers created, that to this day, although many of those rights have become threatened and many of us have to get out there and fight for those rights, the fact that we have those rights, and many throughout the world would just like a crumb of what we have. They would like to have an inch of the ground we've been walking on. And the fact is, to me, many Americans don't recognize that. They take for granted every single day the basic freedoms that we have that many countries will not ever have. And many freedoms, such as for women or for Christians or for some minority groups that we actually go out of our way to ensure are treated with dignity and respect, where in many cultures and societies there is nothing for them to cling to but hoping every day they wake up with food and water, the bare necessities. So the fact that we are a country of freedom fighters, people like myself, and you can become whatever it is you want to become if you put your mind to it and you work. You may not become a millionaire or a billionaire, but you can be guaranteed to be free. You can be guaranteed to find happiness if you put your mind to it, the very simple qualities that some people will never see in their entire life.
And to pursue it, to be able to pursue it. I want to ask you this question as well, because it is a great concern of mine. I travel this nation almost monthly, crisscross it almost monthly. And one thing that is troubling to me, and you have fought for this nation, you're a retired gunnery sergeant with our fabulous Marine Corps. And I don't see the fire in the belly of our American young people to understand that there is something worth fighting for, to preserve and to defend. Please appeal to that audience as well as to what it is we must defend in this nation.
Well, without sounding a little bit contradicting, I remember being a recruiter in the United States Marine Corps, and the young people restored my faith in this country. There are young people out there that are vibrant and active and engaged. And I think throughout many centuries in this country, older people like me and you have always said, oh, these kids don't care, they don't get it. But every generation has had to come to terms with the reality they face, that it's up to them to accomplish their goals. Now, granted, under this current administration, I've seen a lot of enabling and giving people passes in a way where they haven't had to earn the very rights or the freedom that many of us have. So we have to fight back. We have to push back and get those freedoms back. We have to get those rights back. And nobody can just come here and take what we all have worked and paid into for years, if not generations. So what I'm getting at is there is nothing wrong with loving your country, and it does not mean that you hate other countries. It is not xenophobia, as the president tries to call it. It is a love of your nation, and loving your nation on this 4th of July should be expressed by flying the flag in front of your house, honoring the parades, and going out and celebrating and remembering what these founding fathers put in place is up to us to hold on to, up to us to defend. You can be part of the solution or you can be part of the problem. Young kids today are smarter than I ever was. They're accomplishing things that are ambitious and technical and electronic because they have to. We've lost so many of our jobs for labor.
Right.
So what has happened is that we have to invigorate our youth because they're just about, if we want to see them succeed, we have as much of a part of their lives as we make it.
Here. That is well said. Let me ask you this. Now, I know that your time is limited, and I want to ask you this question because I had a chance back on the 21st of this past month, of June, rather, to meet with the presumptive nominee, he's going to be the nominee of the party, Donald J. Trump. And, of course, I was a cruiseite before I met with Mr. Trump. Had interviewed him some time ago, a couple of years ago, before he ran for the presidency. And I left that meeting believing that here is a man I got a chance to talk to him, meet with him in a smaller group than the 1,000 that were there in New York City. But I thought to myself, here is a man that will restore American swagger and American pride. That's what I walked away with. I didn't necessarily have that going in. But after being able to engage him, that is what I walked away from. Is that what you see as well as a retired Marine?
Absolutely. When you said swagger and pride, Obama put a black eye on that. He wanted us to be humbled. He wanted us to be globalized. He wanted us to be equal to all people. When our founding fathers said, no, we deserve better because we're going to work for it, we're going to set up our own society that does not have dictators or socialists. We're not going to have people who take away your freedom that God himself can only provide. It is only man that can take away that freedom. So President Obama has shamed us into thinking we have to be passive, submissive. And why? Why can't we?
Jesse, hold that thought. Hold that thought right there. I got to bring you back for at least 2 minutes after the break. Jesse Jane Duff, Gunnery Sergeant, retired, United States Marine Corps. We'll be back in a minute. TheCL. Back with retired Gunnery Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps, Jessie Jane Duff. And Jessie, let me say this to you. I was saying to Michelle during the break, and I've had everybody on the show from Glenn back to you name them. Sean Hannity's been on this show. But Jessie, when I run into a jewel, when I know when I'm talking to a jewel, and you are one. There is so much I could talk to you through the night, but I only have just a couple of more minutes to share with you here. But I want to set aside some time where you and I can really hash over a lot of topics that us as believing Christians, as Americans, and of course people who believe God, country, and family is most important. I think I got to have you back on at least once a month, and I know you're a Fox News contributor and all of that, but please make room for little old me.
Absolutely an honor for me to be able to reach out to people that are not in Washington, D.C., because you all are the backbone that makes this country move forward. It's not Washington, D.C. It is not. We are the head of the snake. You cannot allow that snake to sever your freedom because they live in this bubble and they forget what it's like to live in real America. 4th of July means that we should be proud to be American. We should honor that. I do agree that Donald Trump can bring that swagger back. I will say, I hadn't always been on board with Donald Trump, as many people hadn't, but then I had an epiphany after talking to many of my friends who supported him. One of my dear friends, who I respected immensely, told me, Jessie, we had a perfectly decent candidate in 2008, which was John McCain at the time. I don't think he's decent now, but he was decent then. And then in 2012, we had Mitt Romney, who was decent then. I don't think is decent now. But we had perfectly decent candidates. And she said, and where did it get us? Wow. They weren't willing to fight. They weren't willing to take the gloves off. Everybody is fearful of these Clintons. That's why they're emboldened to them. Bill Clinton is richer and more powerful now than he was as the President of the United States. And the only man who is on that stage who can take him on without fear and take on Hillary without fear is Donald Trump, because he gets nothing from them. He has never had to benefit or profit from them. He has the contacts throughout the world that he needs. He does not need those relationships that she has established through her finagling and underground money laundering that it appears that she's been doing as she works for our State Department. And as it blew up and burned in Benghazi, instead of sticking around to clean up the mess that was made, she resigned and walked away because she had to pursue her ambition of being President of the United States. You know, if she had finished up what she needed to do, we would have never known what the scandals were that she would have cleaned up, and she could have walked away into retirement. But no, she wants to become the president, and now her honor, her integrity, and every fiber of her body is now in question because the lack of integrity that the Clintons have demonstrated tells me we all must believe in our nation again. We cannot have dictators. We cannot have socialist leaders. We must unite behind Donald Trump, because if Clinton gets in office, the freedoms that we have today will slowly slip away. She's a globalist, people.
Wow. Preach, Jessie Jane Duff, preach. I mean to tell you, this is what I'm talking about, folks. This is the type of fire and desire that must be reinfused into the American spirit, the type of thing that has come from our leaders over the years that have said to us, we can take that hill. There is no bridge too far. And I tell you something, I tell you, my job is to go out and inspire, but woman, you have inspired me. I got to tell you the truth.
This is the motto I have: lead, follow, or get the hell out of my way.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Jessie Jane Duff.
Have a fabulous 4th of July. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to talking with you again.
God bless and keep you. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, folks. That's what I'm talking about. And that is what's still in the American spirit. That's still in the American DNA. The kind of stuff that retired Gunnery Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps Jessie Jane Duff has just talked. She served 20 years. 20 years active duty in the United States Marine Corps. And I got to tell you, as was me, and it's hard to win in this presidential election because when I was skeptical of Donald Trump, I got beat about the head and face for being skeptical. Now that I'm saying, hey, look, it's time for us to get on board, just like Jesse was too. It's time for us to get on board. Guess what? Getting beat about the head and face. Folks, there has to come a point in time where you make a decision. And you have to make a decision, as our last guest, retired gunnery sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps Jesse Jane Duff, has said. And that decision is, do you want our nation to go down into the abyss of socialist ideas, that truly the disciple of Saul Alinsky, Hillary Clinton, will take us down? Listen, if you think that you have seen the effects of socialism by President Barack Obama on this society, he being a person who's only read Saul Alinsky, you be foolish enough to elect Hillary Clinton, who knew Saul Alinsky and sat at his feet. You ain't seen, as Al Jolson once said, you ain't seen nothing yet if you're foolish enough to go down that path. And just could be that the thing that seems unsavory to us in what we will call a Republican candidate or a conservative representative in Donald Trump may just be the exact medicine to get us back on track. Think about it. I'm CL. We're going to be back with a good friend of mine, Rick Rowe, when I return.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
CL, your native son, back with you on this Thursday evening. Standing on the threshold of the celebration of the greatest day in American history, and that is the day that we declared our independence. And it happens to fall on the 4th of July, and most of the time we leave out the idea of Declaration of Independence. We just talk about what are you going to be doing on the 4th. That's not the celebration. Celebration is the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July. Joining me now is a dear friend. I mean a dear friend, somebody who I love this guy. And you know him. In fact, he's one of the few people that I can be with in Shreveport, Louisiana, around the Arklatex. And I feel as though I'm with the man in this area. And that is my good buddy, Rick Rowe, a storyteller extraordinaire. And let me tell you, I really appreciate and have appreciated your friendship down through these years now.
Buddy, we are brothers with a different mother. We grew up in the same town, virtually the same era in the late 50s and the 60s, went to LSU Shreveport. I went to LSU Shreveport.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of similarity in terms of our background, grew up in the same town, and many of the same experiences. So let me tell you, you are one of my heroes.
Bless you, Rick.
Absolutely. When I heard that there was a man, a black man, an African-American man, preaching the truth, sharing the truth, who was refusing to be a victim, who glorified in America and all of the opportunities that this country offers him and his. I was like, who is this guy?
Bless you, man.
I've got to meet him. I've got to tell his story. I'm not kidding you. I had heard about you, did not meet you until there was a gathering, Republican women somewhere. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I was I honestly was a little bit nervous. I don't even know if you remember that because I thank God for people like you.
Well, bless you for that.
Because I know what I believe and what I know in my heart. But because, unfortunately, because of the color of my skin, I have to be very measured and governed in what and how I say what I believe.
Yeah.
You, however, because of the color of your skin, can say so much more than I can. And have an audience, a platform. And I do believe young black people will listen to you that might not listen to me. That's why you're so special to me.
Bless you, Rick. Let me ask you this question, and thank you so much for that. You don't know what it means to me. We hold these truths to be self-evident. You said something to me before we came on air about Jefferson saying those words and writing those words. He put them on paper. For he had to think them in order to write them.
Right.
And what do you think may have been the political gamble, the impact of Thomas Jefferson saying, we hold these truths?
First of all, absolute genius. We have to remember the time, 1776. There was colonialization all over the world. There was slavery. There was oppression. The conquering nations and enslaving them was the norm.
Yeah.
That wasn't the exception. It was the norm of the day. And suddenly you have this guy say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, and this is the most important phrase, that all men are created equal. Can you imagine, CL, the consequence of that one sentence, that all men are created equal, given the time? Slavery was everywhere. He owned slaves.
He owned them.
His best friends owned slaves.
Yes.
Their very economic well-being depended on slavery.
Wow.
And yet he had the guts, the you-know-whats, to say it.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine the controversy that it created, the hassles that he got. Probably people wanted to edit it and say, no, can't say that. But what we have to understand is he said it because it was true. He knew it in his guts. Morally, he knew that this was true.
Yeah.
But he also knew that the time was not right yet to initiate this throughout the country.
But it had to be said.
It had to be said, but we were trying to birth a nation.
Yeah.
And if you had acted on that and tried to enact it at that moment, make every man free at that moment, it would have been suicide.
It would have collapsed.
You would have destroyed the nation before it was even born.
And in 1787, when the Constitution was actually drafted and America did become a nation, Rick, you know this, it was just 80 years, a little over 80 years.
80 years.
After we became a nation, that the very thing that Jefferson wrote abolished the evil of that slavery.
And it actually had been abolished gradually. There was a process of it being abolished in state after state after state
Right.
in the North.
Right.
So people were being freed constantly over this 80 years. 80 years, 1863,
Right.
it becomes the law of the land, the
Right.
entire nation. But again, for him to say that at the time took incredible courage. And that's why that document is so important. And that's why we need kids to know it and understand it
Right.
and not be ashamed of it. You're right. Not everybody was free at the time.
No.
But it said that we're created equal.
Right.
And it set the stage for freedom all over this country.
Dr. King, when he marched on Washington in 1963, this is what he said about the march. They asked him, "Why are you here?" King said these words, Rick, you'll appreciate this. He said, "We have come to cash the promissory note."
There you go.
We've come to cash the check.
Absolutely.
And Rick, that is amazing that check is still able to be cashed.
Absolutely.
In 2016, but so many young people, as you alluded to, don't understand that there is a check.
The check was written in 1776 by
Yes,
Thomas
it
Jefferson.
was written.
Okay? Thank God for Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Love him. One of my heroes.
Yeah.
It's time to cash the check. They did. We did. This
Yes.
nation changed dramatically
Yeah.
in 1863 and again in 1963, 64, 65, 66. The Civil Rights Movement.
Right.
Open your eyes, my friends.
It's been cashed.
It's cashed. You have every
Spend it.
Spend it. Use it. Take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are all around you.
Absolutely.
It's there. You have every privilege that I have. CL, you and I have talked about this. There's not a building, a swimming pool, a restaurant, any place in this town that you cannot walk in and be a part of.
That's
There's
right.
not a job that you can't apply for and have the skills and the education to achieve. Not one.
Absolutely right. You know what, Rick, and we've talked about this too. There's not one thing that I can think of that if I want to do it
Absolutely.
in this country that I am stopped from doing
Nothing.
because of the color of my skin.
Nothing.
Not one thing that I want to do.
And CL, it's basically been like that for at least 30, 40, 50 years,
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
much.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much.
Oh, yeah. Listen.
Open your eyes. And yet we got this fellow from Grey's Anatomy or whatever that name of that show was, Jesse Williams, is that his name? Dear God in heaven.
Oh my! And that type of Michelle and I was talking about that a couple of days ago, and that type of thing. And this is a man who is affluent. That's the
can't believe
hypocrisy of it.
This guy's probably a millionaire. He's
Yeah.
probably making $40, $50, $60,000 an episode.
An episode.
He's rich, he's famous, he's acclaimed, he's achieved all of the American dream.
In America.
And everybody in the room was rich and famous and successful.
And they applauded him.
And yet there's somehow nobody else can get that, or it's not really true, or it's a fantasy,
Hold
it's a
that
fairy
thought.
tale.
Hold that
Are you
thought,
kidding
Rick.
me?
I got him fired up in this house right now. I'm CL, going to be back with my good friend Rick Rowe when we return. You know it. CL. Back with my good friend Rick Rowe, and hey, even during the break, there has been some dazed and confused moments. Rick, you have some quotes here from someone who I definitely think is dazed and confused.
He's been brainwashed.
Share with us.
First of all, I always want to correct this, or at least make sure everybody on. I love black people. Some of the people I love most in the world. I shouldn't have to say that, but whenever you say something negative about somebody, people assume
you're a racist.
So that's on there. But some of the people I love most in the world are black.
It's cloudy out today, Rick. Wow, you're a racist.
There you go. But when people say things like Jesse Williams said, again, this is a guy that is a part of one of the most successful television shows on television, rich, famous, highly acclaimed in this country. And yet this is what he said. Williams also lambasted the practice of consuming black culture while devaluing black life. Quote, "We're done watching and waiting while this invention called whiteness uses and abuses us, burying black people out of sight and out of mind while extracting our culture, our dollars, our entertainment, ghettoizing and demeaning our creations, then stealing them, gentrifying our genius, and then trying us on like costumes before discarding our bodies like rinds of strange fruit."
Wow. And you know what? What's so strange? Folks, I want you to understand something here. Now, these words came from an American actor, right, Rick?
Absolutely.
He is actually then painting himself as a co-conspirator in the very thoughts that he is conveying. He is if he believes what he's saying, then he has to put down the acting.
Absolutely. You're the rich guy. You've achieved all that America has to offer. You must be bad. You must have been polluted by America.
You're a part of the problem.
You're stealing the black culture and wearing it like a costume.
You know, I talked to you about this.
This is nonsense.
Sure it is.
And yet they were cheering.
Oh, they were standing up.
And black people all over this country were cheering.
The other co-conspirators.
Yes.
In what he was saying. We're cheering what he was saying.
How can you cheer this?
Wow.
It's complete, utter nonsense.
Folks, let me tell you something. Go back to J.J. Evans in Good Times. Go back to the black exploitation movies in the 70s. This is actually what this guy, Williams, was talking about. That is and there were black people who willingly participated in what he is talking about.
And made a whole lot of money doing it.
Al Sharpton
Sanford and Sons. I used to love it.
Yeah.
Funniest guy on television. He made a whole ton of money doing it.
Absolutely.
But
Al Sharpton is a prime
enslaved
example.
him. He wasn't shackled to the studio.
He did it.
He did it voluntarily.
He did it. Now, let's talk about this, because you and I, if Hillary Clinton gets to be elected president of the United States, what we have just talked about, they're going to come and slap the irons on us, man.
Hate speech. Absolutely. And we're laughing.
Oh, we're laughing now.
We're laughing, but I'm telling you.
We're laughing now.
Bill Clinton, initially, back in the 90s when he was president, he would have loved to shut Rush Limbaugh down.
Oh, my God, yeah.
That was the initial, the early part of talk radio. And even then, he realized its power.
It was much power.
And its influence, absolutely. But yes, that will come. Again, it will be slow and gradual.
Yeah.
They're not going to take these rights away overnight. But slowly, gradually, they'll enact regulations. The FCC, they'll begin to regulate what they will term hate speech. And hate speech will be anytime you say anything negative about anybody, especially a minority group.
Let me ask you this then. You know, we take a lot of calls on the show when we're able to take calls. Then that will also stymie the people from calling in because they have fear of being found out that they are actually calling a show like this.
It's terrifying. I shouldn't be doing this, CL, to be frank with you. And I really shouldn't. In my position, however, I feel so strongly about this. Wow. I do it because I care about the future of these kids that I've gotten to know, these young men particularly. And I see what's happening to them and the brainwashing that's going on in their community. And if they ever have a chance of achieving all that America has to offer, they've got to get their thinking right. And this kind of thinking will only lead them to a hopeless future because they're going to be angry, And that means they'll do something violent, probably criminal. That'll get them in trouble. Or when they make a bad decision, it won't be their bad decision. It will be my bad decision or every other white person's in the city's bad decision. That's why they made that bad decision. It wasn't their bad decision. It was forced on them by the oppressive society that they live in, or it was because of what happened to their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather back in 1830 in slavery days.
Amazing.
So when you don't admit that you have a problem and you're making the choices that have led to your bad outcomes, then you're stuck. You're never going to achieve and be all that you can be. That's why I speak out on this stuff.
Rick, you know how I feel about you, man. Love you, man. And let me tell you something. Folks, a special affinity to him, too. As all of you know, Jane and I went through our scare, and we leaned and depend on God through faith that he would heal her, and he has, and I certainly am grateful for that. But when this initially faced us, and this is why you're indelibly burned into my mind, Rick, I told Rick about it, and I was telling him that maybe Jane and I wanted to try this type of therapy, and all this kind of stuff, natural therapy. And Rick looked me in the eyes, looks point blank, and he said, "Listen, man, you take your wife to someone who understands the nature of this." And Rick, that day, I called the treatment center that I eventually took her to, there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And even though you didn't recommend Cancer Treatment Centers of America, you made up my mind that we were going to take a different direction. Right. And I listen, man, I just want to thank you for your friendship. I want to thank you for your love. And listen, God bless and God keep. You got to come back when we can really do our thing.
You get me fired up, my brother.
And folks, you got to know this. Rick was my initial pick to be here in studio.
I was your boy Friday.
You were going to be it.
Yeah.
You were it.
Yeah.
And the way things turned out, well, he just couldn't do that. Right. But just the same, I have a great affinity for him, and thank you so much for it. I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. I've been on with storyteller extraordinaire, and if you live in the Arklatex area, you know the name Rick Rowe because you have seen his work. He has demonstrated over and over his God-given talent for telling a story in a way that, and folks, listen, I know incredible storytellers, but Rick Rowe, there is none better than him. I'm CL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes with more of the CL Bryant Show.
spreading round. United Texas time.
CL back with you on this Thursday, and I tell you, between Jesse Jane Duff, retired gunnery sergeant, United States Marine Corps, and my good friend Rick Rowe being here with me, I tell you what, I'm ready to take the hill right now. And it is one of those things where they just rejuvenate, they recharge the batteries. And that is what America is looking for, and that's what America is needing at this point in time. We need our batteries recharged. We have been drained of who we truly are as to our place in this world. There are absolute truths, and as a Christian, I hate the relativism that is engulfing the thought process in this nation. There's darkness, there's light. That's fact. There's land, and then there's water and the sea. That's a fact. There's the sun, and then there's the moon. Those are facts. Those are absolutes. And there are certain laws, we call them laws of nature. But the thing for us to understand is, if there are laws, and we all must agree that there are certain laws that we have no control over, then there must be a lawgiver. There must be someone who set those laws in motion, and that person, in my opinion, we say God, and of course I am a representative of his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. But this is what I'm getting at here. Then, if there are laws that govern the light, that govern the darkness, the dry and the wet, and there must then be natural laws, as Jefferson referred to, that should govern human conduct. And if we are an agent on this earth that does have freedom of choice, then we must take into account what has been told to us in Scripture, that this is our domain, that we have certain dominion over our domain. And there are certain laws given by the God of nature, as Jefferson referred to, that should naturally govern our domain. This is my point. When we get to what has transpired here today, where you have a president by his edict saying that now it's okay for transgenders then to serve openly in the United States military, and that percentage of transgenders represented in this country by their numbers is 0.3% of 1%. That's 0.3% of 1%. That's the population. You mean to tell me that there are not enough heterosexual men and women, or even gay and lesbian, if you want to go that far, in this country to serve in our military, that you have to go and take on the political posture, because that is all it is. It is political posturing of this administration. And guess what? John McCain, who is the head of the Armed Services Committee, heard the news basically when we did. He was not briefed that this was something that was going to be a news item. He was not told in any way that this was something that would be happening. This was a presidential edict. And folks, when those we have elected to office feel as though they can just do whatever they want to do without the consent of the governed, then you know that you have allowed that horse too much rein. Jane and I, we used to have some quarter horses. And quarter horses are horses that you have to rein in, especially in a short distance, or they will run away with you. And this is what is happening in our nation today, is that we have runaway politicians doing things that are politically expedient so that they can leave a legacy of progressivism to reshape the fundamental values of not only America, but humanity itself. Thus, you look at globalism. And when we talk about globalism, something that takes away the borders, something that erases the borders, then you erase the national identity. And that is what is a part of that. So first, you erase the gender identity. Of course, the national identity has been eroding definitely in these last 8 years. The national identity has definitely been eroded. But now look over here. Look over here while we continue to erode that national identity. Look over here because we want to erode the gender identity. That's what we're wanting to do, folks. And I'm going to take your calls after the break. I'm going to take your calls after the break. 320-5335, 320-5335. We will take your calls when we return. And I want to thank some of our sponsors: Holmes, Honda, European, Bailey's, Fine Jewelers, Tiger Axle, DavTac Custom Arms. And when you go there, you tell them that CL sent you, and you'll get 10% off of your purchase. Guess what? That's basically a tax-free purchase there at DavTac. Signature Cleaning and Subway, along with our friends at Chevyland. Call me after the break. 320-5335 is the number. I'm CL. We'll be right back. CL back with you on this Thursday, and we will be taking your phone calls here in just a moment. 320-5335, 320-5335 will be the number to call. I want to thank Transmission Automotive Technologies, Grub Burger, Air Innovation, Rimmer Electric, Dale's Paving, Mercatech, Red Wing Shoes, Brown Dodge there in Mendon, along with SS Truck and Uncle Sam's Fireworks. I want to thank all of them for sponsoring this segment of the C.L. Bryant Show. And folks, I was saying to you, in fact, we'll take your calls now. 320-5335, 318-320-5335 is the number to call, and we'll talk about what is on your mind. And I'm looking forward to talking to you. But this is what I was saying. Rick Rowe and, of course, Gunnery Sergeant, retired Gunnery Sergeant, Marine Corps, was on with me. And it sort of made me think about this. The fundamental change that is transpiring in this country right under your nose. And if your children are attending public school, the type of changes that they are wanting to occur in this country, you need to know this. They are depending on your lackadaisical relationship with your child and his or her education to bring that about. You see, this transgender thing with and the restroom thing and all of that, that is something that they just didn't pull the rabbit out of the hat and say, this is what we're going to do, and the American people are going to go for it. No. There have been foundations being laid in the public school for years now, without you as a parent, without your knowledge. How do you think they got to a point of issuing free condoms in school? Or your daughter can perhaps have an abortion without your knowledge. How do you think they got to that? That just didn't happen overnight. No, there's something that is happening in our nation, and it has been happening around the world in other school systems around the world. It's called data mining. You send little Johnny and Susie to school on any given day in America, public school, any public school in America. And there are questions that are designed to dig into who that child is, and the questions are also designed to make them question their upbringing. They ask them questions like, how do you feel about your sexuality? Do you feel like a boy or a girl sometimes? Open it. It's open. But that's how they data mine that. Michelle, we have a phone call. Bailey. On the line with me is Bailey. Bailey, I want to thank you for listening and thank you for calling. What's on your mind, friend?
Not a whole lot there. I'm just I'm amazed every time that we get a chance to talk that how they're dumbing down the system. I'm retired military. I served over in Europe, and during the time I was in Europe, one of the questions they asked was, how do you feel about gays in the military? And this was as far back as 93. And I told them, I said, here, we talk about military, we're talking about stability. And so if you're putting a person that's unstable or not stable with themselves, how in the world can you count on them during a wartime situation? That makes absolutely no sense.
Very good point that you make. Stay with me, Bailey, because I want to expand on your point with you on the line here, and thank you so much for your service to a grateful nation. Bailey, you have hit the nail precisely on the head, and I hope that you're driving it into the hard head of Americans who don't understand that as far back, did you hear him tell you that it was farther back than just today?
Oh, yeah.
2 minutes.
That this was laid out. This was a planned thing. It was a designed thing. So they were asking you back as far as 93 about this.
Exactly. And, of course, I was on a board at that time, and I guess they were trying to find a climate to find out what people's thoughts were about it. I was reared in the church, and I'm a minister even now. Started at the age of 14 preaching. And so I knew my values. I knew my foundation. And I'm the type of person that I'm going to let you know for certain what side I'm on. Now, you may be offended by the fact that I'm saved, and I don't mind telling you about Jesus, but that's who I am, and I don't allow anybody to compromise those values.
And there is nothing wrong with that. Bailey, I want you to hold on the line. I want my producer to get a number for you. I want to be in touch with you. There's much for us to talk about. Thank you so much for your call. Let me tell you something, folks. You hear me use the word design over and over and over again. And I know that there are some of you who think that I'm just waving my hands around, my hair on fire, conspiracy theorists, and all that type of thing. I am far from that. This is something I was sharing with one of a faithful observer here in studio, and you're going to hear from him in times to come. Sitting in studio with me, and I'm withholding his name at this point to protect the innocent. But just the same, I am going to have him on the show because I wanted him here to observe the show and all of that. But I was talking to him about how this design has taken place in our schools, and I'll be back to talk to you more about it when I return. This is CL. CL, back with you on this Thursday evening here, broadcasting from the jeweled cities of the Arctics. I'll take more of your phone calls, 320-5335, 320-5335. And cuz, yeah, man, thank you so much. Actually, when I got off the line with Bailey, the last call, Michelle said, "That was your cousin. You do." I said, "Oh my God." Yeah, thanks so much for calling. Thank you for listening, man. I didn't know a lot of my relatives listen to me. They don't tell me, but Bailey's one of us. On the line with me now is a good friend of ours, a good friend of the show. He calls in regularly. I've missed you, man. Daniel, thank you so much for touching base again. How have you been?
Good, CL. How are you?
Really, really good. And what's on your mind, friend?
Well, I took a break from cutting this yard for water break. It's hot out here. And I was catching a part of your show there, and I was listening to Bailey speaking about the, ruling with the military that came down today. And, I'm current military. And the way I look at it and the way I've always looked at it is if a person is, can meet the standards, then that person should be able to, serve his or her country, because if you exclude them for whatever reason, if you, like you're saying, well, this isn't really your country, we're not going to allow you to fight for it. And, like it or not, everyone is an American, transgenders, cross-dressers, or whatever the case may be. See, the military is based on, capabilities and merit, not based on, your lifestyle or what you do.
Daniel, believe it or not, I agree with the premise that you're saying. Yes, every American should have the right to defend and fight for America. But the larger picture here is not even transgender. It's not even gay or straight or anything like that. This is an edict that is coming down on the heels of the bathroom edict. This is a part of an agenda that the president has. Of course, I agree with you that Americans should be able to defend America. I agree with that.
Well, see, here's what I'm not quite understanding. Like, every one of us grew up sharing a restroom. And, whether we admit it or not, every one of us has been to a restaurant or a gas station where they only have one restroom. Males and females use it. So, it's not a totally foreign concept. In Europe, they have lots of places that only has one restroom for a whole apartment building for the whole floor. And,
that's where you're missing it. That's where you're missing the point. You're missing the point of what they're wanting to do. Of course, at the gee whiz, I remember the old Gulf stations traveling across the country with my father when we would travel. There was only one. You'd have to get the key to it in order to go into it. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the concept. The concept is this, Daniel. I don't know if you have a son or daughter or what have you, but if your son feels on a certain day that he wants to go into the girls' not restroom, but her locker room because he's feeling girly that day, then that is okay. Now, I did this thing up in Texarkana in protest of M130 just a couple of months ago. And I told them that we are losing our identity as far as our core values are concerned. They had passed in the dark of night in executive session saying that in Texarkana, Arkansas, that locker rooms, bathrooms, what have you, would be available to anyone who felt that they were being discriminated against because they felt transgendered. Well, I thank God that they have struck that down. They have repealed that.
Well, see, but they've had male cheerleaders for, of course, forever.
That's not it. That's not it, Daniel.
But I'm saying that those male and female cheerleaders, they share locker rooms.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
I'm a teacher too, Sierra. I do. I coach basketball as well, so I can tell you for a fact that
they don't share the same showers, Daniel. They don't.
No, they don't don't share the same.
Of course not.
Share the same shower, but they do get dressed together, and they do be in the locker room together.
That's a team effort.
Shower.
That's a team thing that you're talking about. It's a high school team thing that you're talking about. And see, that's exactly where they want to make this gray area. You see, you're describing exactly how they're pushing this. They're saying, well, there's already these shades of gray but you have cheerleaders. You just talked about people of same mind, same goals, and same opinions. That's a different thing, Daniel.
I mean, okay, point taken. But however, when when you're talking about this, when you're talking about the issue, that's going forward, I take it as this. If you do something inappropriate, then you get whatever punishment that's handed to you. Now, it's the same thing. What happens in a football locker room with all males? If a male does something inappropriate in the football locker room, you discipline them, and then you move forward.
Why? But let me ask you this: you're a teacher. You're a teacher. You deal with kids and young people. Yeah. Daniel, you know this: a 14, 15-year-old boy in a school setting with his raging hormones. Let's talk about this, or let's just call it what it is. Yeah. You do not want to give him an excuse to go into a girl's bathroom. We are setting a stage for disaster here, man.
Yeah, but I think that you're kind of pushing it that you can go in there and do whatever you want, and look at the girls and
that's not it.
No, that without any repercussions. I mean, of course.
That's not it, Daniel. That's not it. I wish I had. And listen, I want you to call back at another time so that we can examine this further, because by missing the point of the design of what they're wanting to do, and you mentioned Europe, and we certainly don't want to go down the Amsterdam trail, and I'll tell you all about that. But Daniel, listen, always great to talk to you. You always have an opposing view most of the time, and this is one that I'm definitely opposed to, but I want to talk to you more about it. Thank you so much for calling, friend. I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
CL, Thursday, here in the jeweled cities of America, streaming live throughout the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story that the world has ever known. We will celebrate the anniversary of our Declaration of Independence on Monday. And I want to bring on air with me now someone who knows very much about the great benefits and advantages of being an American, and taking advantage not only through his faith, but also through his business acumen over a period of time. Joining me is Ken Weimer, a businessman, missionary extraordinaire. Thank you so much for being here on the C.L. Bryant Show with me, Ken.
Thank you for having me, C.L., and it's good to meet you.
Ken, tell us about those two facets of your life. Some people don't see them going hand in hand, business and Christianity, but they do, don't they?
Absolutely. And I truly believe that as a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ, I need to set the example of what it is to work and have a strong work ethic. And I often say that my mission field is out in my business, because I encounter people every day that I would not were I just sitting behind a desk. I show up at our church building on a Wednesday afternoon just before our Wednesday meeting, and I have a broadcast that I do over Skype because I spent time in Africa and I speak French fluently.
Je parle un peu français.
Oui, je parle bien le français. C'est ça. And there are some preachers that I had connections with when I was in Africa. I spent 14 years in Africa preaching the gospel, and then my wife became ill, and we weren't able to go back, and that's how we moved to Shreveport in 1995. But on Saturday mornings, I do a live Skype teaching session with those preachers in French, and then we have another work over in Malawi in southern Africa, and the Lord is raising up some congregations there, some preachers that He is teaching the gospel of His Son, and so it's my privilege. We do actually, technology is phenomenal because there's 4 congregations there now that all meet over Skype.
Wow.
And it's very encouraging to hear them singing some of the hymns that we're used to hearing by title.
Yeah.
And yet when you listen to the tunes, they're completely different, but they have such beautiful voices and singing to the glory of Christ.
You know, that's amazing.
So I do that Saturday morning, but most of my time is spent out in the street and with people. I have a business that is a benefits consulting business, and we go into businesses and help people get coverage. Aflac is one of our primary providers, but we try to cover people in case of a serious illness or injury. And when I mentioned believing in private enterprise, it's one of the areas, as far as Aflac is concerned, that I think a lot of people don't understand, is that it's helping people keep out of bankruptcy. Because 63% of bankruptcies today are due to a serious illness or injury.
Yes. Yes, and you know what, Ken? That is absolutely right. My Jane, my wife, went through a serious injury, taxing on the purse strings. You better believe it, and I can see how that can crash any type of family income.
And that's usually what happens. They have to fall back on family or somebody, a church, or sadly a can, holding out a can and trying to raise money for the out-of-pocket expenses just to survive.
Wow. Now, when you talk about being the best example of a Christian on the job, the one thing to share with you this, and you've been on the mission field. Jane and I have gone to Brazil on 3 separate mission trips there. Large cities. People don't realize how many people are in these cities there. and they come out in droves to camp meetings and crusades, and they walk. They walk, and if they have a car, it's about 5 or 6 of them in a small car that can be swallowed by the potholes that are in the street. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is this: the example that you give as a businessman, I see our young people, when they look at the various menus that are being offered to them as far as Christianity is concerned. I was with these gangbangers in Detroit, and I asked them how come they were in gangs, Ken. And I'm going to continue this, and I want you to speak to it when we come back. And I asked them, have they ever been in a church? And they said, yeah, preacher, we've been in a church. But he says, you see that church over there? You go there and they believe that it's okay to be gay. You go to that church over there, and folks, I'll continue this when I return, because this is a mindset that you're going to have to deal with. There is a huge mission field right outside your front door here in America, even Canada. Huge. I'm CL. Be right back. CL back with you on this Thursday evening, talking to Ken Weimer of Aflac and also a missionary in his travels. Ken, I was sharing with you about this experience I had with some gangbangers in Detroit, and they were telling me, I was asking them about their church attendance. And they pointed to one church there were churches on 3 different corners. They pointed to one that said that you go to that church, they believe in gay marriage and all that. You go to that church, they say abortion is fine and so forth and so on. But you go to this church and they'll say that neither one of them are right. But preacher, the thing that we know about these streets is that we know the truth about the street every day. Mm-hmm. And that is, you get it or you die. Mm-hmm. That's the kids are looking for something that is cohesive, something that they can actually believe in. And my only answer to them was, and of course this is my preacher answer to them, is that yeah, the church may be different, but Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You're a missionary. What are people looking for in their spiritual self that perhaps the church or the entity of that is not giving it, in your opinion?
Well, if I could just share a brief testimony. I was raised in a very strict fundamentalist home, and I remember the first thing when I was 5 years old, seeing my dad up reading the Bible with a kerosene lamp. He was a missionary in Africa at the time, and was one of the first things I wanted was a Bible. And then I was raised memorizing Scripture, and I believe the Lord used that even later on in my life because it's in my heart. But I was raised a religious Pharisee, mm-hmm. and to look down on people. Mm-hmm. I was an isolationist when it came to dealing with sinners out there, and I was taught that somehow I was getting better and better the more I served the Lord. Mm-hmm. And
they became worse.
That's it. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, there was a transformation that took place even after I got to Africa as a missionary. I went there in 1979, but in 1984, and we didn't have any running water, electricity. We lived in a shell of a house. I went out to be a pioneer missionary, and we lived in a timber town. That's what they did. They cut timber and loaded on trucks and sent it out. And I was the only white man within hundreds of miles. And we settled in to learn the culture. But one morning early, I got up early, I was reading through Isaiah 6, and it struck me where Isaiah said, in the year that Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up. I went back and studied in Chronicles who Uzziah was, the king. The Lord had prospered him. And yet he was lifted up in pride one day and went in and laid his hands on the altar, and the Lord struck him with leprosy. And there were 80-some priests that surrounded him and begged him not to go in, but he did. And the Lord brought me low because I saw I was Uzziah. I had presumed on a holy God and had never seen myself for what I was, a lost sinner. And for 3.5 months, I languished. I mean, I was out there to preach, but I didn't know what to preach. The Lord took it all away.
Amazing.
And I went back and started reading the Scriptures and wondered how it is I could have missed Christ, because I had the knowledge. But to go from Genesis, and even in Genesis chapter 3 and verse, that whole passage, but when Adam and Eve fell and they put on fig leaves, and that didn't cover their nakedness, God took those off and killed an innocent animal, shed that blood, and clothed them. I thought, that's Christ. That's a picture of Christ.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, when I go out and talk to people now, I am one sinner telling other sinners how the Lord was pleased in His grace and mercy to save someone like me.
And if He can change you
And
in your nakedness,
all in His blood,
if He can cover you,
that's it.
Man, that is amazing.
So I have a compassion for people. I don't bring it up in the business, but I will tell you, a lot of people ask me. I find a lot of people in need, and And just like this, when the Lord gives occasion, I'll testify, to His glory.
Absolutely. What is so what he has blessed us with here is I am a Bryant. That's what my father and that's what I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to stamp it on my forehead because that's what I am. I am a Christian. So what I feel, and even though sometimes I know I would disappoint my father and so forth, I know I've disappointed. In fact, I was brought low too at one point many years ago in my life. But you don't have to have the stamp on your forehead if it's sealed in your heart. And everything that I say, regardless of if it's a Jesus statement, it's still a Jesus statement because that's who I am. And folks, everything I say politically, everything that I do, it's all about Him anyway, because that's who I am. And I think that is the message that so many of us who are professing Christians miss. We were that Pharisee. And that does not draw
That's
them.
us by nature.
Yes. I'm CL. I know you always understand that you're going to get a good dose, one way or another, from me, either when you listen to this show. I'm CL. Be right back. Man. I want to thank Ken Weimer for being here with me. Ken, there's going to be many more times, brother, I assure you of that. And folks, let me tell you something. You take the time to understand the declaration that was made for our independence. It is all inclusive. It is all inclusive. Now, I'm going to take this next minute to tell you this. If you miss tomorrow's show, which I call the weekend show, I have on with me tomorrow. First, I have Dave Bray on to talk about his experiences and so forth as a soldier in the military of our nation. And then I have on with me our good friend Chris Ann Hall, constitutional attorney, author, and she is absolutely incredible. You will be mesmerized. You will be engaged, I assure you, in the interview that she and I were able to do about this great land of ours. And folks, you take the time. Now, that show will not only air, will not only be on tomorrow night, but it will air over the weekend. And then if you miss any portions of it, you can listen to it. It'll be airing on The Promise over the weekend, and then The Promise that morning.
Right, and then Monday night.
And
Monday night we'll be airing it again here on the 4th of July.
And on the 4th of July, we will air it again here. So if you miss any portions of it, on The Promise, what time are we on The Promise, Michelle? 9 o'clock? Was it 9 o'clock?
Yeah, 8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock on The Promise.
8 to 9.
8 to 9 on The Promise. Just the first hour of the show is aired on The Promise on Saturday mornings, and then on Monday morning you'll hear it from 8 to 9 on The Promise. But then you'll hear the show again in its entirety on Monday evening, 5:30 to 7:30. And if you miss any portion, be sure to tune in. And by the way, download the free CL Bryant app to your iPhone or Android and listen to us anywhere on the go, because the show is cataloged on that. There are jewels that Chris Ann's going to drop in on us, and that you must have for yourself. But yes, it is the 4th of July weekend, but we are celebrating the Declaration of American Independence. And I want to thank God, as always, for bringing us to the close of yet another day. And I want to thank Him for our men and women in uniform around the globe who defend our right to speak our mind. And until I'm able to talk to you again, I'm CL, and may God bless and keep you all.
To the families left behind, we'll stand by your side, and the bond will never be torn. For those who wear the uniform.